That would be kind of cool. But I do think the rebound is one of those times where it's really, really cool to look at how different bodies respond differently. I don't know, like for volume, I can't imagine Dave running volume.
I hate high volume
Yeah.
training.
Well,
Like you put
volumes,
so much effort into that.
and you can, like, I don't want to say this as a knock on Dave's physique because I had some of the same things, but you can see, like, what are volume muscles? Lats, arms, you know, and what are strong muscles? What are where you just got to move weight? Glutes, quads, mid, thick back, thick chest, yeah. And Dave's got that in spades, and so that's a hard thing. That's the thing that I struggle with. I never really properly transitioned. I feel like I could have been a better bodybuilder. I did at the very end. Like, you know, my lats really came up like the last year that I competed when I finally accepted that I needed to be a pumper. You know, I need to get a pump in the gym. But I feel like my leg size got held back in certain angles because I was lower volume, and I was lucky with arms that those were just big naturally. But you can kind of see, you can see across the board almost like who like your quintessential sarcoplasmic pump bodybuilder, Flex Wheeler, Phil Heath, massive arms, you know, not a lot of thickness. Who's your like quintessential heavy, you know, like heavy strength power bodybuilder? Branch Warren, Ronnie Coleman. Branch Warren, you know, tends to have weaker arms. But and it goes both. I mean, I'm totally going on a tangent here, but it goes both ways. And I was actually talking to Nate Mead about this. The Branch Warren was known for his conditioning. You could go pull up photos online of him hitting a rear double bicep, and you'll see his lower back wasn't that lean. It's like it's the coolest thing, and knowing like how certain things impact a look. Because Branch's ass was so big that the skin's pulled so tight, his ass always looks in shape, and his rectors and mid back were so thick. And I pulled a photo up for Nate from I don't remember what year, but you could actually see he still has fat on his lower back, but he looks inside out shredded because his erectors are so thick, the skin's kind of pulled tight, and his glutes, you know, he's pulling the dump truck behind him. That skin is pulled so tight on his glutes. Where you think conversely, like a Jay Cutler, who's in equal condition or possibly even better, but he's got a smaller ass, tiny little butt, and you know, and so it doesn't look as lean. And the same thing with his lower back. You know, there's kind of folds on it because the skin's not just stretched so tight, even though his lower back probably has less body fat than Branch's. So there's really, it's a weird sport in that there's so much to take in that you can, you know, like you can hide certain things. Because you can be shredded and have shredded glutes, and they'll look soggy if they're not big enough, if the skin's not pulled tight. And you can be slightly soft, but like Ronnie Coleman was never not going to have shredded glutes. And if you look at some of the photos, like 2004, he didn't really have that striated of glutes, and his lower back had some thickness on it too. His glutes were just so big, you know. You can have a balloon with a real thick wall, but if you blow the balloon up this big, it's going to thin the wall out, you know. And so there's like so much going on. I'm totally on a tangent now, but
I want to go back circle back to you said the lats are a volume body part too, but I remember your lats came up a ton when you trained DC style. Did they not?
No, that's a misnomer. When I did DC rows.
The Dante rows.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The seated rope rows.
Okay.
But that year,
right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, what was your protocol there? Were you doing like 10 pumpy sets, or was it?
Well, this is really misleading, and I don't ever really want to talk about this because I don't want it to. Because I think DC training is a great training, and Dante's a great friend, and I think people benefit from DC training. And I think all things being equal, it's probably one of the better programs ever devised for the majority of people. But Steve and I didn't really do DC training that much. I shouldn't say this. We took the principles of it for sure, but we didn't, like in Project Super Heavyweight, we did DC training, but that just happened to be over like a short period where we were really just doing pure DC training. For the most part, we took a lot of the ideas of it, the Widowmaker set, training heavy progressive overload, and then did more of a bodybuilding split. But no, there was the time my back came up a lot. There was a period where and I 100% credit Dante with his DC rows because I think more than anything else, that was the only movement. That was the first movement that made me really learn how to contract my lats and build my lats, and I think that carried over to other movements. But I looked at some of my old like Elite FTS logs at one point because you kind of forget. You know, it's been so long. You think you remember, what your training was, but you don't until you look back. But we would do no. There was one time when we were trying to do 40 sets in 45 minutes for back. I remember, and we split the workout out and also split the workout into like lats and thickness. But we would do like I remember for a while we were doing 4 sets of we do pullovers with reverse grip pull downs, a superset, 4 sets of that, and then I would do the DC Widowmaker, and I do bent over rows, and we do 1-arm rows, and deadlifts. But yeah, that's I've always been hesitant to say this because I don't want to like. I think DC is arguably the best general structure of a training program ever created. But I didn't really do it 100% all that long or that often.
Yeah, I've come to like kind of a similar conclusion, and especially with how you organize the split. Like, I mean, in general, I don't feel like the split is the important thing about a training program. I think it's more of just it's more like a logistical product of the work that you want to get in throughout the week.
Yeah.
With that being said, like a push-pull legs, I think becomes kind of limiting at some point, especially when you have, like, if your shoulders, arms, and maybe lats need to come up relative to the rest of you. And so I've deviated more and more to where, like, it's like I train 5 days a week, and rather than it being like push-pull legs, it's more like, okay, this is more of like a chest day with some extra side delts because I need to train those more. And this isn't just a pull day, it's more like, it's really like hamstrings and lats, and then I have another back day where I do more back work and some biceps. And so it's, you know, it always kind of morphs into that. And then it'll probably have to change. It's like if I don't love having an arm day, but if my arms continue to lag to the point where they either, you know, prevent me from being as competitive as I want, or they hold me back, is like if I turn pro and that's a knock on me or whatever, then maybe I'll have to throw that back in.
Yeah, that's like we should do a whole segment on that because I think our whole video. That's like a really good point. Because you do push pull leg. And I think if you want to just add size, you want to say, I want to gain 40 pounds of contest weight this year. Push pull legs is what you got to do because it gives you the maximum amount of volume and sets, and not just that, but the maximum amount of sets you get where you're not especially fatigued on chest, back, and legs. But like arms, I think are like a volume body part. You can do 20 sets for arms. You're not getting 20 sets for arms in a week if you're doing push pull legs, unless your workout's 6 hours long. So arms and then shoulders also, because I can do, you know, you can do 16 sets or 20 sets for shoulders in a workout. You know, if you really want to work on rear delts, you know, you're talking like, you know, 4 or 5 sets, two exercises of 4 sets for side delts, a pressing set, 2 exercises of, you know, 4 sets for rear delts. You're up there in sets. You're not doing that while also training chest and triceps in the same workout. So it's always a give and take. To add the size, you've got to hit the heaviest, the largest muscles when you're the most fresh and the most often, but that neglects the smaller muscles. But to bring up your shoulders and arms, there's no way you're going to get like legs and back with the same volume. And when I say volume, I mean like, because you can do a ton of sets, but the same volume where you're fresh and
I feel like the whole volume, like there's so many semantic issues when people start talking about volume, to the point where like any 2 bodybuilders could talk about volume and they're almost never really talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
But actually, I mean, I think even Dante himself would, well, I don't want to speak for him, might agree with a lot of this because, like, I agree with you that DC was so great for gaining size, or a program like that, because you have so many opportunities throughout a week to progress your strength on big exercises. And Dante would always say, like, you know, if your quads are small right now and you're hack squatting 4 plates for 10 and you increase that to 6 or 8 plates for 10, your quads are probably going to be bigger. And you can apply that logic not in every case, but in so many cases that it becomes the most productive way to train if you're like a beginner or intermediate. But then you get to a point where like it hasn't panned out for everything. And so like if you say arms are a volume body part, to me that doesn't necessarily mean that you need 20 sets per week or more for biceps and for triceps, but it might mean you need to train them when they're fresh and you can actually get great output and get a decent amount of volume for them and have that, like, your, you know, protein synthesis is only elevated for so long after a workout, right, in the muscles that you train. So if the only time you ever train your triceps is after you've already hit chest and shoulders, which are already stronger body parts, like how much of those, say, 20 grams of contractile protein that you can gain in that next 24-hour period are going to go to your triceps versus you dedicated the entire day to arms? That's a big difference.
And especially, like, back to the volume, the argument is that, well, when I'm doing pressing movements for chest and shoulders, my triceps are getting work. But I would argue that they're not getting work to the point that you're creating a stimulus that's going to require new growth. So all you're doing is when you finally do hit triceps, you're hitting them where they're fatigued, but fatigued with like a sub-physiological level of fatigue, not enough fatigue to actually stimulate growth. So then you're forced to train them when they're weaker, and you can't create that as much of a stimulus with however many sets you get. Yeah, so it's tough. There's no perfect workout. I mean, and that's part of the fun of the sport is that, you know, like you can devise a million different workouts, and everyone has benefits and you know, or pros and cons. Yeah, I used to like really kind of obsess about that, like learn what a person trained like, and kind of see what their body, you know, like you could see, you know, like Flex Wheeler. It's like, God, he's so round, so much sarcoplasmic growth. His arms are round, his delts are round, but there's something lacking in like the back thickness or chest thickness that's just different than Ronnie or Branch. But you take a Branch, he's like, God, he's so dense. He looks like he's made out of granite. It looks like you couldn't hammer a nail into him. But there's like something lacking with his arms, you know, like the, you know, or even his lats a little bit even.
Well, like, I mean, if any of you, like Dusty Hanshaw still does a lot of podcasts and stuff, so if any of you listening to him, you know that he's like the biggest advocate ever for DC training, and Dante himself trained Dusty, and he put on a ton of size using DC. But even Dusty will now say that if you look at the way he trains all of his different body parts, there's kind of a little bit of everything. Like, he's known for having a huge back and kind of a grip and rip it style of training where he does like absurdly heavy deadlifts and rows, and it's worked out really well for him. But he'll tell you like his arms or his biceps at least didn't grow until he got way away from that style. Just for one example.
Yeah, so someday someone's going to invent the perfect routine that's the best of all worlds. But and it's hard though.
It's probably going to be AI.
What's that?
AI.
AI is going to do it.
Yeah,
it's going to be after
some bodybuilder nerd's going to get like just have some neural network running and analyzing. 16 years later, it'll be like print out the perfect workout. It'll be weird though. It'll be like you do like one heavy set of deadlifts at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, followed by arms on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. and
well, that's what Jared. That's like what Jared does.
Oh yeah, Jared Feather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to talk with him about training too. He's fascinating.
Maybe we'll all have like, we won't really even eat food. We'll just like, it won't just be an insulin drip. We'll have like a nutrient drip hooked up to our body, and it will know exactly when each given muscle is ready to synthesize new protein.
Yeah, you'll just have a packet of.
I've got a question for you, Justin.
For more content like this, visit www.teamtroponin.com.
This video is brought to you by First Attachment Nutrition, battle-tested nutrition, expert formulated supplements. Join the First Attachment revolution.